Bigfoot Collectors Club with Bryce, Michael, and Ivy. I know a story of high strangeness or two. Let's do this.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to Bigfoot Collectors Club, the show where we talk to amazing guests about their personal paranormal history and share stories of high strangeness. I'm your host, Michael McMillan. With me always is your other host,
Bryce Johnson.
And our super producer,
Riley Bray.
Riley, you have such a smile on your face. It's as if this was the first time you've ever done the show with us. And I don't know.
Wow, I can't believe I'm on Bigfoot Collectors Club.
It's like,
he's a big fan.
I can't.
It was just the jazz hands that Bryce did as he said Bryce Johnson that really got me.
Got it. Good. Yeah. As they should. Bryce, are you in a jazzy mood today?
Yeah, I'm in my son's bedroom. He's I've been kicked out of my office because he's doing building a Fortnite science project with a few of his buddies. And he's like, "Oh, Dad, please, God, please, just a half hour more." And I was like, "Fine."
What is a fort? I don't want to keep our guests waiting too long. But what is a Fortnite science project?
I don't know. He's got to build something with his buddies in creative mode or something. I don't know. It sounds fun. It sounds like they're having a blast. So
they're world building. That's awesome.
Yeah, the world building,
also
man, you know?
Sounds like something that might crash Zencaster. It'll be fun. We'll see what happens.
Definitely. Hey, that's all part of podcasting.
Bryce, I just saw the video. You are in the lower bunk of the bunk bed / desk of your son's. Okay.
Yeah, I got all kinds of cool toys around me too. So that'll be fun. Here's Morpheus.
Oh, nice.
So we're going to have a good time.
Every kid's favorite action figure, Morpheus. Lawrence Fishburne from a movie from 30 years ago.
That's right.
All right. Well, let's jump right to it. This week's guest is a podcast producer turned Thru-hiker. Please give a warm Club Scout salute to host of the Thru and star. Host, star, it's kind of hard to say here. You do both. You star in it and you are host of the Thru Podcast, or just Thru, from Q Code Media. Cody Hofmockel, welcome to the show. Woo! How are you?
Thanks, y'all. I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
we're so happy you're here. It's very rare that we are actually speaking to someone who spends as much time in the wilderness as you do.
Oh, yeah. I've spent a lot of time out there, I guess. Doesn't always feel like it being back in real life for a while. But yeah, I haven't seen Bigfoot yet, but I may have spent some time in the wilderness, but I'm also a chronic skeptic. So I've been nervous, to say the least. But I hear you welcome skeptics. So
yes,
of course,
here for sure.
And then we put them to the stakes.
Yeah, and then we let our audience judge them. No, this is great. So before we get started, let's just talk a little bit about the show. And this introduced a term that's new to me, maybe not new to the other boys. But Cody, what is Thru-hiking?
Yeah, Thru-hiking, as a loose definition, is just walking any trail from end to end. And in my case, I went on the Pacific Crest Trail. It starts at the border of Mexico and California, and it runs 2,650 miles to the border of Washington and Canada. So Thru-hiking, the Pacific Crest Trail, would be hiking from end to end on the PCT. But there are shorter trails that you can Thru-hike. So there are 200-mile trails, and if you do the whole 200-mile trail, that's a Thru-hike. So it's as opposed to a loop or an out and back. You're starting at the beginning, ending at the end.
And then at the end, you're hopping on a plane, or someone hopefully is there to meet you to take you back to wherever you want to go.
Do you have to hike back? Yeah.
That's called a yo-yo, and people have done that before, which is, people have done that. I did not. I took an airplane. But yeah, people take trains,
the best
planes,
airplane
cars.
ride of your life. I would imagine.
You're like,
we're the worst.
I'm 5 months from the parking lot. It's time to start maybe turning back around.
Yeah, get back to the car. Absolutely.
I have so many questions. One, it's sort of a stupid, obvious one. This is Bigfoot Collectors Club. What did your feet look like at the end of that trek?
Oh man! By the end, they were pretty calloused, and I stopped getting blisters.
Cool.
But they didn't look so bad at the end, but at the beginning, they were pretty bad. Just like multiple layer blisters on my heel, like quarter size, that sort of form rings, and you get like a blister on your blister. So that's fun.
Whoa.
And like my worst fear was having like a toenail fall off. Like that was one of the things I was most scared of. And I came
just because it's gross, or because
it's just I don't like nail stuff.
Yeah.
I don't like nail stuff.
Yeah.
Like anything with nails just freaks me out. So they were gnarly. They felt worse than they looked for sure. But yeah, blister.
Did the feet themselves, like, did you lift them up and they had like a fucking 8-pack on the sole of your foot after you were done? Just like the most shredded you've ever seen your feet.
If feet could have 6-packs, mine would have them. I hope. I think one thing I can say, I got strong dogs.
Man, I mean, we're talking about a long hike. How long did it take you, Cody, to get from Mexico to Canada?
5 months. I was out there for 5 months.
Dang.
And yeah, it's a lot of, it's 8, 9, 10 hours every day. You try to cover somewhere around 20 miles a day.
Whoa. Wow.
Wow. And you started in April of 2022? And
April 23rd, 2022.
Okay. And I don't want to, you're here, so I'm assuming everything went well, but we don't have to spoil the podcast.
This could be the spirit of Cody. We never know. Yeah. Maybe he died along the way.
Some woodland doppelganger came out, Cody went in.
Doppelganger, AI's come a long way. There's
That's true.
Jeez.
AI kind of the singularity began to happen when you were in the woods, so I'm not sure we can trust you.
Now there's a podcast right there.
Who came back from who's man. Yeah.
Who came back from that trip?
Cody, what causes a person to walk that many miles for that long?
Quarter life crisis, existential dread, finding one's. For me, it was a combination of many things, but I remember I had just gotten sober. I had upended my life. I was living in Dallas for like the first 9 years of my adult life, got sober, got out of a relationship, moved back in with my parents, and sort of my life as I knew it was upended and over. And I didn't have a ton of responsibility at the time, newly single, and I was able to make it work with my job, being a podcast producer, making an original show out of it. So all those things sort of lined up, and it was sort of, for me, a lot of people see it as a way to get away from the world or society. For me, it was definitely a re-entry after, isolation that comes with the things I struggled with, and then starting recovery, getting better, getting healthier. Okay, now I'm ready to like go back into the world, find community, friends, be like a human being again.
Yeah, it seems paradoxical because, I mean, you would think that to enter back into society and be around people, you wouldn't like go hiking alone on a trail, but the opposite is sort of true, right? Like you found community out there.
Absolutely. It's I think maybe like a misunderstanding or misconception, if you will, is that it's a solo endeavor. And it can certainly be that, but the Pacific Crest Trail is crowded, and it's crowded with a lot of amazing, really cool people, and it's certainly a social adventure as much as anything. You make deep friendships really, really fast, and there's a great community out there.
So tell us about the Pacific Coast Trail for those of us who don't know Pacific Crest Trail. I'm thinking of the Pacific Coast Highway. That's the only
That's
time
the one
I've
we
ever
travel
gone.
with.
Yeah, that's the one I go on.
I'm familiar. Yeah.
Thank you. The Pacific Crest Trail, where is it cutting through, generally speaking? Like, what big landmarks or cities are you going near? What natural landscapes are you going through?
Sure. It starts at the border of Mexico and California, outside of a town called Campo. So it's about an hour southeast of San Diego. And from there, it goes north parallel to the Anza Borrego Desert. And around Los Angeles, it starts to take a westward turn for a couple hundred miles. So it runs under I-10, or the 10, as I've learned to say now that I live in LA. It's not I-10.
okay.
That's
No,
in
no, no.
Texas. In
Yeah.
LA, it's the 10. So it crosses under
right.
the 10, goes through the Angeles National Forest. Sort of when you get to a little bit north of LA, it takes the aqueduct. And from there, you go into the Sierra Nevada mountains for 400 miles or so. You you go through Kings Canyon National Park. You do part of Yosemite. Then you kind of end the Sierra section around Lake Tahoe. From Lake Tahoe, you do Northern California. And it's like northern, maybe the eastern part of California, right? Because you're going north of Lake Tahoe. And then you cross into Oregon. You go through Crater Lake and then into Washington, into the North Cascades. So the 5 main sections are the SoCal Desert, the Sierra Nevada, Northern California, Oregon, and Washington.
So these are all amazing. First of all, that is fucking wild. Also, this is so exciting for listeners of our show and for us because those are like prime Bigfoot territory. Even the Borrego Desert is home of the Borrego Sandman. Like people think that they've seen Sasquatch out there. So we know you're a skeptic.
Squatch,
yeah, the Desert Squatch. Let's just get into it. We ask all of our guests, what is your personal paranormal history, if any? And also, I'm curious, did any of these areas that you hiked on come with any legendary cryptids that people were talking about or that you witnessed folklore being active in the community?
Sure. My personal experience with the paranormal has been in trying to explain it with the laws of physics and science and our own mind, and our own complex and little understood neurophysiology and what it's capable of.
Great, we're all about that. So that sounds to me like maybe you have had something weird that you're like, oh, it could have been this or it could have been that.
I've had sleep paralysis.
Me too.
I was just actually, I was telling my girlfriend that I was going on this podcast, and she was like, "Do you know about my ghost story?" And she told it to me about being, it was about being in a hotel in Seattle that was like supposed to be haunted, and she woke up unable to move with someone sitting on her chest, and then had like 5 out of place ribs in the morning. And I was like, and she was like, isn't that weird? And I was like, it's sleep paralysis. And she's like, how do you explain the ribs? And I was like, you tensed up, you moved in a weird way. So that's how I am with the paranormal. I'm really
or a succubus was crushing them ribs, Cody.
Heavy ass succubus sounds like it to me.
Yeah. So so the Bigfoot is all over the PCT. It's like every town you go to is like their claim is Bigfoot. I'm going to show you.
This makes me so happy.
I took this guitar on the PCT, and my Big Bear Lake sticker is Bigfoot right here.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. So
we got to get a photo.
Fiber? Is that a carbon fiber guitar?
Yeah,
that's
it is.
So cool.
Yeah. Yeah. That was
amazing.
I took it the whole way as my like favorite piece of gear.
That's so cool.
But so
we got to get a photo of that for the Instagram and put it up, see all your stickers.
So like you said, like they claim him in the Anza Borrego. They claim him, I guess, in Big Bear Lake. In every region I went to, they claim Bigfoot. So it's like, which one is he in? Is he just traveling the West Coast up and down? Like, does he hike the PCT? I will say the best legend I heard was a Bigfoot legend. There was this guy, I don't remember his name. I maybe saw him like 3 or 4 times. He was this hiker that would sometimes.
I love that it kept popping up.
No, it was just some of my friends kind of like knew who he was, and I just never really had an encounter with the dude. But he would like sometimes be hiking barefoot and like shirtless and like really, really slow. And he would just pop up from time to time. But we were going through this area, I think it was in Northern California, where there are lava caves, because you start to get into like volcanic territory up there. So really all of the Cascade Range is volcanic mountains. So actually I think we were in somewhere in Oregon, Washington area. And I remember my friends being like, yeah, this guy, the one that you've seen barefoot and shirtless, he knows about Bigfoot, and he says that Bigfoot uses the caves, the lava caves, to travel through the region.
Oh.
Yeah, that was his claim to fame. And I was like, something about this guy makes him not seem like a primary source. Like
the barefoot, shirtless, slow hiking's not establishing credibility for you.
Man.
So far, you haven't described a person that might not be Bigfoot himself. You know what I mean?
That's what I was thinking.
There might be a one-to-one here.
No, I was like, dude, you're in the caves. Like,
you are Bigfoot.
Have you ever seen that movie, The Dark Divide, with David Cross, based on that biologist who also walked the PCT? He wrote a book about Bigfoot. He got a Guggenheim grant to study the legendary creature and its sociological effects, but he had an encounter up at the lava tubes that he thought might have been a Bigfoot. And this guy is a PhD and
I thought I had it on my shelf. I didn't. That's where I went. Sorry.
I was looking for the guy.
That's the book I got you for Christmas a couple years ago. Bryce.
Yeah. I actually ended up interviewing the name is escaping me, who David Cross's character is based on. He's a guy who studies butterflies and all that stuff, but he had some pretty incredible stories. And
is he playing Robert Michael Pyle in that?
That's
where
it.
Bigfoot
That's
walks?
It. Bob
Okay,
Pyle.
yeah,
That's exactly
that's what
right.
I thought.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I do have that book on my shelf. All right, sorry, different.
Very
book.
interesting. Yeah, wild stuff.
So what's the verdict? Like, what was his encounter like? I mean,
well, funny enough, so he had some pretty strange encounters that he couldn't explain. No actual visual sightings but when he came on my show, Expedition Bigfoot, I actually got to sit down and interview him. And as a biologist, he had absolutely no problem with that type of terrain and environment housing a creature like that. And anyway, he actually revealed on our show that a few years ago, he went back up that direction and was in Oregon, and he actually was driving along one of these small logging roads where he actually saw what he believed to be the creature. And he's kind of putting his neck out on the line. I mean, he's a published biologist and doctor, a fellow, and so it was a lot for him to come out and say, "Man, I've had some experiences. I think I've seen some stuff, and I'm putting my neck out on the line here." But he also said his experience. One of his big experiences, if you ever watch the movie The Dark Divide, and I highly recommend it, it's really great. He has an experience in one of those lava tubes that you were talking about.
I just pictured like a tube slide, like a water slide, but it's full of lava.
Right.
See,
Bigfoot's in little neon shorts doing the slide. Yeah.
So I'll say two things to that. I'll say that if Bigfoot Collectors Club wants to take the next leap and send someone out to live at the lava tubes for a summer, I'm your guy. I'll go out there as a
yes,
scout. We just got our first field reporter.
I'm here for it, man. I'll take my little handheld recorder. I'll take so much equipment. We can't blame equipment failure, and I'll take my
Cody. Be careful what you offer, because we are, we're looking to expand the team. So
this is how a lot of the shit that I get myself into happens, is me just like riffing in one of these meetings. I will also say that this is one of my fears of coming on the show. I was like, they're going to convince me they're going to I'm so impressionable while I may be skeptical.
That's
all
fine.
we can do is just lead you to water.
It happened so fast. You were like, well, this PhD was out there, and now I'm reading about him. I'm like, great. Now I kind of believe in Bigfoot.
So here's the thing. I think you touched upon something earlier when we were talking about it, when you were like, where was he? I mean, the thing that we struggle with, and obviously we don't know, we prescribe to nobody knows. Anybody who tells you what they know for sure, don't talk to them. You know what I mean? So we're into the stories, and B, we are open to, there does seem to be some type of weird phenomena happening, whether that is something that the human brain is producing that science just hasn't been able to explain yet, or there is not just one, but let's say endangered or small species, small populated species of some type of undiscovered primate who's very smart, who knows how to avoid human contact, does not want human contact, that's roaming out there, which is why and might migrate during the year, which is why people see them, not just him, across as far down south as Florida. Okay. Then we have the third thing, which is this might actually be some type of paranormal or interdimensional, something that is beyond our reach of scientific explanation, but maybe in 100, 200, 300 years, they'll be like, oh yeah, things, there are multiple planes of reality overlapping at all times, and sometimes we can see into, or something can cross over from that. Now, that's a very wild idea for a lot of people, but when you hear these stories that we've heard, and Bryce has witnessed at times firsthand, it makes me think that something is happening out in those woods. And I want to know, have you ever had an experience during this? I mean, how many days were you out on the trail? 5 months? What does that
5 months.
So did you ever have anything happen where you're like, what the fuck is that sound? Or I feel like I'm being watched right now.
When it did, the one that comes to mind is actually, it was on the PCT, but it was in 2021. So it was before I went on a thru hike. I went on a long car camping road trip, and it was like 2 months up and down the West Coast, and spent a lot of time in the PNW and in Bigfoot country to and fro. And I was right over the Washington-Oregon border on the Washington side, right up from the Columbia, and going to bed in my tent at night, a couple 100 feet from the PCT at a campground, and dead silent in those forests, no wind, nothing like that. And just not quite a human at all, not quite a bird, earth-shattering shriek from somewhere in the forest, just like I was alone too, and I didn't camp many nights alone on the PCT, but that night I was alone, and I've never had anything, the full body chills down your spine. What am I hearing? Fight or flight, hair on the back of your neck stands up, and immediately trying to explain it, and kind of like just was like, we'll just call it a bird and go to bed, and like who knows?
Bigfoot, call it a bird and go to bed. That's the t-shirt right there.
Yeah. So that was probably like the weirdest sound I've heard, for sure.
Yeah, it sounded like it was a real quiet moment too, which is often a precursor to these types of experiences or sightings. They witnesses often report that everything around them just sort of gets real quiet. Not even the bugs and everything just goes almost an eerie silence, like a bubble has enveloped the space. Did you ever feel anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely in that moment. It was just like the noise level had been taken out of everything. I was with people for the most part on the Pacific Crest Trail, and like I said, it's a crowded place. So, I'm also so tired at the end of the day that I just fall right asleep.
You slept through all the Bigfoot activity.
Yeah, I slept through. He could have been out. Man, in Oregon, I remember camping by this lake and just hearing like rustling outside of my tent, like surely there's a bear, right? Like those are like, you got to be kind of worried about them messing with you and taking your food and stuff, and like, surely there's a bear, and this thing's getting so close, and it's not scared of me, and it's like making this sound, and I look out and it's a deer, of course. Like the deer are the most like annoying thing on the trail. So I don't know if I remember any like eerie, creepy, everything goes away silence. Sure. Except for that one night in the Pacific Northwest was truly the quietest I've ever heard that area, which it's interesting.
There you go. It's possible, if it's that populated, if that trail is that heavily trafficked, and there's something out there that doesn't want to be bothered, it's not going to come anywhere near you guys. Mm-hmm. Don't want to turn this into a have you ever investigation, but have you ever been out there and heard like weird knocking noises, or like people hear like what sounds like sticks being clacked together, called wood knocks. Have you heard anything like that? Yeah.
Man, maybe
like off in the distance, and you're like, oh, it sounds like someone's taking like a baseball bat to a tree right now, or hitting two drumsticks together.
I don't know. There's all kinds of weird stuff like that. So I don't know if I ever like wrote it down like, oh, significant knocking sound. But you like you said, there's so many hikers out there that whatever creature it is might avoid it. And also, like, yes, I probably heard something like that, and I probably chalked it up to someone doing something weird in the wilderness. Sure. Right. So that's kind of the tough. Yeah.
Don't count out humans being weird in any of this stuff.
Oh, totally. People ask like, what's the scariest part about the PCT? And I'm like, people in town.
People.
Like, yeah. The people that live in the desert full time. That sort of thing. But
stumbling onto the wrong farm in Humboldt County. Like, uh-oh.
Right. Yeah.
So Cody, I'd love to ask, what was sort of the transformational effect that this journey had on you?
Yeah, I think it did a lot more than I expected to, but in a different way. I think it really, you spend a lot of time with yourself out there, and while there are people and there are friends, you spend the majority of your days hiking 8 hours, 9 hours in your own company, right? One thing I like to say is like, I was stuck with this asshole all the time. Like, this asshole being me, like this is who I had to hike with. And so I think it revealed a lot of like my thought patterns and my behavior patterns. But it also taught me to trust myself in a way that, I hadn't been able to before, because my decisions and my way of behaving had led me down a path that wasn't in line with how I wanted to live and wasn't in line with my values. And doing the Pacific Crest Trail said, okay, I can rely on myself. I can rely on my judgment. Like, I can keep myself alive. And I can do a hard thing. I can do a thing that takes a lot of logistics and a lot of life planning and a lot of day-to-day effort and grit to do. And I can trust myself to do it. And the other thing is, it totally ruined me forever. Like, it's all I want to do is go through hike. Like, I'm totally ruined. Like, it's like when I got back, I'm addicted. Yeah. Imagine that. Like, when I got back, I was a mess. Like the post-trail depression is a real thing. And it hit me hard. And like, I couldn't get out of bed for like 2 weeks, and just like very physical, very palpable response to it. And I've since like, I moved from Texas to LA. I've I have a life that I like, but it's like, when can I go again? When can I go? Like, when's it happening? It's like, I know for sure it's a thing that gives me a lot of joy, and it's kind of hard to do. So it's like something I'm always chasing after.
You know what? Keep the podcast going. You'll always have an excuse to find another Thru trail.
That's true.
Astronauts claim that same thing coming back from the moon. They go into sort of a post-orbital depression. They, once they come back from that sort of liminal space and they get back to their day-to-day, the world seems busier, more crowded, less defined, and they experience some of that same sort of after effect as well. I think that's interesting.
It's a perspective shift, I imagine, that they see the Earth from that far away, right. And see that we all live on a blue dot. And not to compare myself to an astronaut, like, I would never do that.
You can go ahead, yeah.
We're doing it for you.
Well, the Earth is so big, and even just this little corner of the United States, like just the West Coast, is unimaginably beautiful. And some of these things that you can only backpack to will change you as a person. Walking into the Sierra Nevada mountains, jumping in the Alpine lakes, knowing that that's out there, and then you got to come back and file your 1099, all that stuff. Like, it does, people say through hiking will ruin you.
I remember this is years and years and years ago, and you just hesitantly compared yourself to an astronaut, I'm going to now hesitantly compare myself to you. But I was shooting, I shot something out in the desert for like 2 months in Morocco. And when I came back to the States, I first went to New York. And I remember like going from that to the Union Square Virgin Megastore and walking into and being like, what the fuck is what are we doing? What is all this shit? And I quickly adapted back to mass consumerism, but like,
I was gonna say you probably bought toys and records.
No,
this is great.
There was that moment of just like, whoa, we don't need any of this shit,
Yeah.
So I've been this whole time thinking, what was the moment when you came back where it really hit you like, whoa, I'm living disjointedly, or we are as a culture living disjointedly from nature?
I mean, it wasn't even really when I came back. I can give that example, but it happened on trail too, because you go in and out of these towns. And I remember about a month or so in, we stopped in Tehachapi. And the first month, you're pretty out in the wilderness. You're only stopping in small towns. You're fully engrossed. And we went to Tehachapi, and I went to a Walmart after being in the wilderness for like a month. And I remember being in the Walmart and just like, I'm gonna pass out. Like it was just like the fluorescent lights, so many products everywhere, and it's just interesting, the effects on the brain when you take yourself out of those environments for so long and you come back and your brain's just not used to the visual stimuli, just the sounds and the people and like having to perform the act of shopping. Even like a month into the trail, right? And a month out in the wilderness is enough, I think, to instill this effect. But just going to a Walmart for the first time was like, what is going on? And I think when I got back, for me, it was like, when I got back, it was to San Antonio, Texas. And it's a driving city. And I hadn't really driven a car, in a while. And I got back to San Antonio, and there could not be a place further removed from what we refer to as nature, or what I like to call geography. I grew up deprived of geography. So
it's really interesting. I've never heard it put that way before, but I like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's driving, right? You get back and you get on the road and into a car, and it's just like, not only are we so disconnected from nature, but we're so disconnected from each other, because like the rage you can experience while driving is like, I rarely would feel like that in a face-to-face encounter with somebody. So just seeing the like vast concrete expanse, and like, you can't walk anywhere. You gotta drive there. And last thing I'll say about it is, on the trail, there's just this palpable sense of humanity helping each other out, because there are like trail angels is what they're called. And there are, hikers help each other out. People that don't hike, like, bring you food, supplies, water, let you stay overnight at their house. And you really, like, your faith in humanity is restored. And you come back and you think like, well, why can't we just like help each other out day to day? Like, why isn't there like the Thru-hiker app in real life, where it's like, but obviously there are other challenges, but it's just that spirit of community was so refreshing to see on trail, and really kind of the opposite of what you get when you go back to a major metropolitan area.
Wow. I'm worried. I'm looking over at Riley, and I'm like, you know what? Next week we're going to show up, and Riley's already going to be.
Yeah, I'm like, can I produce
halfway to the Borrego
a podcast from the trail? I mean, why can't I?
that was a thing too, man. That was like,
how the hell did you pull that off? That's great. Where was the base camp? At least in season 1, when like, who were people following you? At least town to town, or what? How were you sent? Sorry, this is like a little inside baseball, but how are you like sending files
I am very
to
curious,
people?
Yeah. I mean, I will say that like the PCT is town to town, and there's reception in those towns. Obviously, like you're going 3 to 6 days at a time before you resupply and gear up. So I was recording a lot on just like a lav mic. I was recording a lot voice memo on my phone, and I was recording. I had like one of those Shure mics that plug into the phone. I didn't end up using it a lot, and I did a lot of video content, and it really, like, it was just getting what I could recording as much as possible and trying to still have the experience while producing, because that became like a huge thing. If I had my way and told the full story, it would be 50% about how creating content about it changed it completely, because like you're making these relationships with these people and you're like, can I also record you because you're a character in my story. But I would get to town, I would get signal, and I would just dump like voice memos and lav mic files to Spoke Media producers who would organize it, and that's how they're making these episodes. And now what I'm working on is the narrative series that comes out later this year, where I'm just like, I have this giant audio archive of voicemails and, you know, WAV files and video. And I'm like using sound design, narration, and like field audio to craft like a narrative storytelling podcast.
Amazing.
Cool.
Speaking of
so
sound
great.
design, you're just, you know, listening to your podcast, the sound of your feet hitting the gravel is so just, it's so, I don't know. It just puts me at peace. Like I love listening to it. It just makes me feel like I'm right there with you. It's one of those sort of things that I really loved about it.
I've been listening as I've been going for hikes this week, and like it's the perfect companion if you're just out walking around. So I highly recommend it if you're looking for something to listen to out on your hikes. Cody, all right, we could talk about this the whole time. We're just going to have to listen to the podcast to get these answers. But it's time to play a game we play with all of our guests. It's a rapid fire sort of yes or no kind of deal. I'm going to go down a list of phenomena. If you're open to it, you're going to say believe it. If you're not open to it, you're going to say bullshit. There's no in between. You have to make the choice in the moment. We can always circle back and justify things later, but that's it. We're going to go real quick. This is a game that we call bullshit
or believe it.
All right, Cody. On your mark, get set. Ghosts.
Bullshit.
Bigfoot.
Believe it.
UFOs.
Believe it.
Mothman.
Bullshit.
Curses.
Bullshit.
Possessed dolls.
Bullshit.
The Bermuda Triangle.
Bullshit.
Hollow Earth.
Bullshit.
There are alien constructs on the moon.
Bullshit.
Psychic visions.
Bullshit.
Dreams are really other realities, and when you fall asleep, you visit them.
Believe it.
Time travel.
Bullshit.
Bending spoons with your mind.
Bullshit.
Entities from other dimensions visit our world.
Believe it.
Pet sea spirits.
Bullshit.
Tarot cards.
Bullshit.
The Loch Ness Monster.
Bullshit.
The government is hiding the truth about Roswell.
Believe it.
We are living in a simulation.
Believe it.
You could outsmart a werewolf.
Bullshit.
Planet Earth is a sentient macroorganism.
Believe it.
The universe is looking out for you.
Believe it.
Finally, in our original timeline, the famous Bears family last name was spelled Berenstein, not Berenstain.
Bullshit.
Oh my God. Honestly,
Well
Cody, that was
Well
one
done,
of the best BS or believe it's I think we've ever done. You nailed it.
Oh, man. I nailed it on these arguable, highly nuanced.
But just going with the flow, finding it in the moment, watching some of the struggle happen in real time was just
pushing through. Yeah.
Wonderful. So I say pat ourselves on the back, boys. He's a Believe It on Bigfoot now.
I think it was just being nice. But, you know, hey, it's like I thought you were going to be skeptical on a lot more. It seems like you're open to a few of this stuff, which is great.
Well, believe it was like I'm open to it, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. UFOs. We didn't really talk about it. Have you ever seen any weird light? I mean, God, you saw so
strange
much
light
night sky
all the
out
time.
there.
Yeah, I mean, you know, so I actually had a really great night sky moment. I was night hiking in Northern California. We were, my hiking partner and I were having to pull like a massive day, and we had to hike like well into the night. And it was after this burn section, a very densely forested section of Northern California. We're about to get to this giant bridge over this river. We're coming down the switchbacks of this mountain in this like dense forest, and night sky is brilliant. And I just see, you see a lot of shooting stars, you see a lot of satellites, but what I saw was a shooting star type of thing, sort of between a shooting star and a satellite, happening over and over and over again from one spot in the sky. There were probably like 15 of them, and it was just like, and it was like they would just Matrix. Bloop, 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 one after another, exact same path. I chalked it up to possible Starlink launch or satellite launch, where they do like a bunch of them at once, but. Yeah, and I say believe it on UFO because do I believe there are unidentified flying objects? Sure. Life on other planets or life that visits us is certainly within the realm of, I mean, it's got to be, right? Like just a sheer numbers game. But I saw those lights were like I had no explanation for other than maybe a satellite launch.
Love it. Anything else on that list you wanted to circle back to clarify?
You seemed open to sort of interdimensionality. We got to believe it on that. And also, I think that maybe plays into your believe it on dreams or other realities.
Yeah.
Can you sort of elaborate on that idea?
Sure. You made the connection. And so interdimensionality, like, I don't know. I always go back to we don't know what we don't know. And and you think of all the work in physics out there that I, am not smart enough to understand. But as far as I know, the mathematical possibility of other dimensions is, certainly within the realm of things scientists are exploring, right? So, and the idea that a creature could exist in another dimension in a way that we couldn't perceive or fathom. Anytime it comes down to it's beyond human understanding, I'm willing to get get on board. Like I've always heard the analogy like the way a 2D creature would see us, like it wouldn't be able to perceive us. So how could we perceive something that moves freely within time? And so the idea that the dream world is as real as our world kind of speaks to this idea. Buddhism as a practice is like very important to me, and the idea that reality is more of a mental illusion than anything. So if dreams are also a mental illusion, how are they any less real?
You are preaching the BCC gospel right now, Cody.
Beautiful.
We're into this shit.
I have to say one thing about tarot cards. I gave it a bullshit because of like I don't think they have magic powers, but I will concede that they are a framework for self-reflection and a good way to invite someone into your reality and your world and to examine yourself.
Great. We'll just put you down for believe it then. Yep.
Yeah, we're gonna go back and change that to
we're just gonna go ahead and change your answer.
No problem.
Believe it.
Yep.
I was 50. I'm cool with that. I'd be down with that. If that's a believe it, then change me to believe it.
Bigfoot Collectors Club is brought to you by Athletic Greens. I've been drinking my AG1 by Athletic Greens every morning, and it makes me feel like I've started my day with a healthy choice for once. I get it before I take my coffee, and it makes me feel so good. It's so easy. It's just one scoop of powder mixed with water. Sometimes I do coconut water if I have it handy, just once a day. Boys, I know that you've been drinking your AG1. What do you love about it?
I like you. I love the flavor. To me, this is a great foundational nutrition drink just to start my day. I mean, if you want to kick things off right, you might as well just go with some AG1. That's how I do it. So I really like this product, man. I think you guys will too.
Agreed. It's like first thing in the morning, I immediately feel the energy from it. I mean, this is something that I truly actually really like this product, and I've made it part of my daily ritual.
Yeah, I mean, why take a bunch of different things when you can just mix one scoop of powder in water once a day?
Exactly. AG1 was designed with ease in mind so that you can live healthier and better without having to do a lot.
Yeah, it also gives you increased energy and mood support, making it easy to live your best life. Not only that, I think you guys will really love how they package this product. Comes in a great container that you can store in the fridge, as well as this super convenient and awesome shaker. So give them a check out.
It's in my.
Love
It's
it.
now omnipresent on my kitchen counter. That shaker is out and ready to go all the time. If you're looking for an easier way to take supplements, Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Go to athleticgreens.com/BCC. That's athleticgreens.com/BCC. Check it out. All right, rad. All right, well, it's time for this week's Story of High Strangeness. Bryce, you're doing the honors this week. What do you got for us? And more importantly, what do you have for Cody?
Yeah, well, I think you guys will like this. Here we go. I'd like to begin tonight's Story of High Strangeness with a quote. I love suffering. It brings me so close to God. Neem Karoli Baba. You might find this next story of high strangeness a little strange, and not your standard robot alien with carrot hands kind of strange, but a different kind of a strange, more of a, hey man, we're all just one with the universe, man, kind of strange. I'm talking about awakenings. To be more specific, SSAs and SKAs, otherwise known as spontaneous spiritual awakenings and or spontaneous Kundalini awakenings. So just what is a spiritual awakening? From the book Varieties of Religious Experiences by William James, quote, spiritual awakening is a term given to describe a subjective experience in which an individual's ego transcends their ordinary finite sense of self to encompass a wider, infinite sense of truth or reality. These deeply embodied noetic experiences are often perceived as a direct connection, communion, or non-dual merging with an unlimited and universal consciousness, the divine, or quote, God, in perceived oneness, end quote. During an SSA, or spontaneous spiritual awakening, an individual may experience a sudden and profound shift in consciousness, with a range of symptoms including heightened sensitivity, increased intuition, a sense of interconnectedness with others and the universe, and a deepening of their spiritual or religious beliefs. They may also feel a sense of disorientation or confusion as their old way of understanding the world no longer seems to fit. These experiences can be triggered by a variety of factors, such as a near-death experience, a profound loss or trauma, intense suffering, meditation, or even just a sudden moment of insight or realization. They can also be powerful catalysts for change and transformation and can offer a profound sense of meaning and purpose, leading some individuals to make significant changes in their lives, such as leaving a job or relationship that no longer serves them, pursuing a new spiritual path, or dedicating themselves to a cause or a mission that aligns with their newfound sense of purpose. It's worth noting that not all spiritual awakenings happen spontaneously, when in fact many individuals around the globe undertake a deliberate and intentional journey of self-discovery and spiritual growth to achieve such awakenings. For those long-time listeners of the show, you've probably heard me hinting at some strange experiences that I've had, but I've been reluctant to talk about. This is mostly due to the fact that I was still processing them and was just not comfortable talking about them. Yet. Well, I feel the time has come to finally share with you, our dear listeners, some of those experiences I was referring to, because it's my belief that they would be classified as spontaneous spiritual awakenings.
Whoa, all right, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt. This is a monumentous occasion, everybody. Mark this one as a milestone episode. Cody, we've been trying to get some of the stuff out of him now for 4 years.
No, I cannot believe this is the one I'm here for. Like, I'm like sitting over here grinning like an idiot. Oh man, I cannot wait.
Well, if you were thinking that I was abducted by Bigfoot, taken aboard his spacecraft, and implanted with his hybrid baby, I'm sorry to disappoint.
Oh.
The main reason I felt uncomfortable sharing these experiences were because, well, for starters, the first time it happened to me, I was caught completely by surprise and had absolutely no context for or control over the experience. I'd never even heard of the term spontaneous spiritual awakening or Kundalini awakening. Also, the experiences left me with a variety of mixed feelings and emotions, Shame, confusion, elation, bliss, and even guilt. Who was I to have a spiritual awakening? Why me? Although a quick Googs would reveal that I wasn't so alone. According to Pew Research Center survey conducted in 2009, about half of the U.S. public, a staggering 49%, says that they've had a religious or mystical experience, defined as a, quote, moment of sudden religious insight or awakening, end quote. A figure much higher than in surveys conducted in 1976 and 1994, and more than twice as high than a Gallup survey taken in 1962. In fact, the 2009 Pew Forum survey finds that religious and mystical experiences are on the rise and more common than ever. However, studies also show that these types of phenomena largely remain private for most experiencers and are seldom discussed publicly. Harvard psychologist William James, and author of the seminal book Varieties of Religious Experiences, from which I quoted earlier, noted that his colleagues and the medical professionals did not value or respect spiritual awakenings, typically assuming they were crises of puberty and adolescence, hysterical personalities, or acute medical conditions such as epilepsy or schizophrenia. I've also had a lot of time to reflect on my experiences and put them into perspective, as well as to try and figure out not only how they might have been triggered, but why, and what would be their significance in my life going forward. Allow me to give you some context. For as long as I can remember, I've been searching for answers to the big life questions that we all contend with. Who are we? Where did we come from? Where are we going? Growing up with divorced parents standing on opposite sides of the spiritual fence had a profound impact on me. My mother, a devout Christian, my father, a staunch atheist. The tug and pull on my young psyche left me in a spiritual crisis, so to speak. Years later, while as a young man in Hollywood pursuing his dreams, I was suffering through a severe alcohol addiction, a career in turmoil, and I became increasingly worried about a planet in peril. And that's when I had my first spontaneous spiritual awakening. I won't go into all the details because so much of it is just too weird and unexplainable. But the best way I can describe the feeling of it is an exaltation of pure gratitude and bliss for all life, a knowingness at your deepest core level that we are all connected. And I'm not just talking about people, but plants and animals, rocks and rivers, earth, and even the greater cosmos beyond, all a part of that of which just is. In Hinduism, there's a phrase repeated throughout the Upanishads, Tat Tvamasi, thou art that, which I think sums it up nicely. You have this unexplainable sense that we're a part of everything, separate from nothing, not even our creator. And as beautiful as that all sounds, it can also be scary as fuck, because you have no idea what's happening to you. At least I didn't. For me, as I remember it, it happened gradually over the course of a few days back in 2008. At that time, I was reading a lot of esoteric literature, and I had become obsessed with the occult maxim, as above, so below. This idea that the infinite space out there in the ever-expanding universe was also mirrored down here in the smallest unit of measurable matter, the subatomic particle. That it was mostly all just empty space, including even us. Constantly contemplating and meditating on this idea literally blew my mind wide open into a state of nirvana, which literally means to blow out. Father of microbiology Louis Pasteur may have stumbled on the same surprise. To quote him, "A bit of science distances one from God, but much science nears one to him." And that's how I felt. There was no way that all of this was just some cosmic accident. It was like I broke through some invisible membrane between matter and spirit. After that, it felt like one synchronicity led to another, until finally every waking moment was just one giant synchronicity buzzing in my head. Even time, as I knew it, simply melted away. The best way I can describe it is likening it to one of those giant coin funnels often used for charities, where you drop a coin at the top and watch the coin careen around and around the funnel towards the bottom, picking up speed along the way, until the coin is moving so fast that as it circles near the bottom's horizon, it literally becomes a blur. When at last, plop, it falls into the coin bin below. That's a lot like what it felt like. Only you are the coin. The funnel is a world of synchronicity and connectedness, and the plop is you falling into pure bliss and ecstasy of oneness with the universe. Sounds great, right? Well, it is, until your wife comes home from a hard day of work and you're in the hallway weeping, trying to explain to her how beautiful everything is and how it's all just a part of everything else. I mean, you could see my predicament, right? Good luck with that. You see, because in the norms of Western society, awakenings are not supposed to happen. And if they do, they'll likely be explained away in terms of psychopathology. Sure, we built an entire nation on religious principles, all while casually claiming that our Creator permeates every facet of our society and all things in it. Hell, it's even brandished right there on the almighty dollar. In God we trust. But heaven forbid you should ever come into direct contact with him or her, or else you're liable to be labeled a heretic, a charlatan, or a psychotic schizophrenic. Whereas in the East, in places like India and elsewhere, these types of experiences are built into the fabric of the culture. Their society has been accepting of and exploring these types of phenomenon for thousands of years. When they see someone on the streets of India caught in the ecstasy of samadhi or at union with the divine, they're approached with love and reverence and invited into the temple or ashram where they can work through the experience in the presence of other spiritual practitioners. Here in Los Angeles, you're far more likely to find yourself in a different type of temple, surrounded by bars and guards, or maybe even worse, padded white walls donning a straitjacket. Better to stay in your apartment. Because while spontaneous spiritual awakenings can be transformative and life-changing, they can also be extremely challenging, even disturbing. For starters, one's individual sense of reality can shift so dramatically it may cause them to feel disconnected from the physical world around them, which can lead to feelings of disorientation and confusion, emotional instability, increased vulnerability, as well as alienation from others. Now, not everyone who has an awakening experiences or confronts these dangers. In fact, an overwhelming majority of the people who've claimed to have had these types of experiences find them to be extremely positive and transformative. And so now that you know a little bit about SSAs, or spontaneous spiritual awakenings, let's talk a little bit about SKAs, or spiritual Kundalini awakenings, because although very similar, there's some notable and distinct differences. A spontaneous Kundalini awakening specifically refers to the awakening of the Kundalini energy, which is believed to be a coiled serpent at the base of the spine in Hindu and yogic traditions. When this energy is awakened, it's said to move up the spine, activating the chakras and leading to a range of spiritual experiences and insights. Some of the symptoms of a spontaneous Kundalini awakening can be very similar to those of a spontaneous spiritual awakening, such as increased sensitivity and a sense of interconnectedness. However, Kundalini awakenings can also involve physical sensations such as tingling, heat, or pressure along the spine, as well as an intense emotional and psychological experiences. Some who claim to have had the experience of an SKA can literally feel the sacred serpent energy rising from their chakras or psychic energy centers until it reaches the forehead, where it bursts forth in an energetic explosion. It's worth noting that not all spontaneous spiritual awakenings involve Kundalini awakening, and not all Kundalini awakenings are preceded by a spiritual awakening. However, for those who do experience a spontaneous Kundalini awakening, it can be a powerful and life-changing experience that leads to greater spiritual understanding. SKAs usually arise from prolonged engagement with religious or spiritual practices, which can include meditation, yoga, tantric sex, pranayama, and connected breathwork, as well as through the use of mind-altering substances, particularly the so-called classic psychedelics, such as psilocybin mushrooms, LSD, ayahuasca, and DMT. In the 1960s, two Harvard professors, Richard Alpert and Timothy Leary, conducted research on the therapeutic effects of psychedelic drugs, assisting the Harvard Divinity School graduate student Walter Pank in his 1962 Good Friday experiment with theology students, the first controlled, double-blind study of drugs and the mystical experience. While not illegal at the time, their research was controversial and led to Leary's and Alpert's dismissal from Harvard in 1963, after which Timothy Leary became a well-known figure of the 1960s counterculture, popularizing such catchphrases as turn on, tune in, drop out, set and setting, and think for yourself and question authority. Whereas Richard Alpert traveled to India in 1967, where he met and became a disciple of Hindu guru Neem Karoli Baba, otherwise known as Maharaji, who gave him the name Ram Das, meaning servant of God, where he went on to author several books, including Be Here Now, which helped to popularize Eastern spirituality in the West. Besides entheogenic drugs, SSAs and SKAs can also be triggered during sex, contact with nature, or as a result of homeostatic imbalance, stuff like fasting, sleep deprivation, or intense athletic activity, although they appear to most frequently emerge following periods of prolonged psychological turmoil or trauma, including loss, bereavement, and addiction. Alcoholics Anonymous was practically founded on a spontaneous spiritual awakening. In December of 1934, when William Wilson was admitted to the town's hospital in Manhattan for a fourth episode of drying out, he was despairing of hope at that point, but later wrote of a transformative experience he had while there. Quote, "It seemed to me, in my mind's eye, that I was on a mountain, and that a wind, not of air, but of spirit, was blowing." End quote. It was a spiritual awakening for Bill, and a dramatic one at that, that would go on to serve as a model for future AA members seeking redemption from their addiction. Now, on an interesting side note, the heightened sensory sensitivities that are commonly associated with SSAs and SKAs may extend to paranormal-like experiences as well, with people reporting increased synchronicities, visions of an archetypal or symbolic nature, telepathic experiences, feeling spiritual presences, hearing sounds or voices not produced externally, and seeing things that are not materially present, which really just adds another complex piece to the already unfinished puzzle of high strangeness, begging the question, could there be a connection between non-ordinary states of consciousness and UFO, UAP activity, alien visitations, and Bigfoot sightings? Perhaps so. After a few days of my initial experience, the feeling slowly and gradually faded away, and to be honest, I was kind of glad to see it go. I just didn't know what to do with the experience, as it had left me with a profound sense of unease about who I was, my place in the universe, and what I was to do with this knowledge. For me, I just wanted things to go back to normal, whatever the hell that meant. And although I no longer doubted the existence of a creator, and I certainly was less afraid of death, as funny as it sounds, I just wanted my life back. Interestingly, I was able to finally quit drinking shortly after that, and it did prove to be a transformative experience for me for the better. But I was also left picking up the pieces of trying to explain what had happened to me, so I pretty much just stuffed it in. I didn't tell any of my friends or family because, what was I going to say? Hey guys, you're not going to believe this, but I had God on the line for a few days. They all would have thought I had just lost my mind. And maybe I did. But I know better. I know what I experienced. And the next time it happened to me, I was going to be ready for it. Or at least so I thought. But that's a story for another day.
Whoa. Wow, Bryce, thanks for sharing that, man. I mean, that's stuff you haven't shared with Riley or me.
Yeah, or hardly anybody, but now the BCC listeners and you, Cody, and anybody else who wants to listen. It's there now, and maybe it could help somebody who's going through the same thing or who has experienced something similar.
Cody, you were nodding your head a lot during that story and grinning. Like, did any of that stuff connect with you? Like, what were the moments? Because I saw you a couple times being like shaking your head and smiling. What the hell is that?
Do we have a couple hours? I mean, it's like
we have as much time as you have, buddy.
I know you got. There's this information is not out there, so I don't think you could have like known to tell a story like this for me coming on. But I connected with. I mean, so much of it. I could, from the beginning, you quoted Neem Karoli Baba, and I'm like, here we go. I mean, Ram Dass and his books and his talks changed my life. It was super, incredibly important to me. I've had a few moments in my life that I can point to as being, close to, if not the experience that you're describing, and a lot of it does also factor into my own personal recovery. So for you to bring up Timothy Leary, Ram Dass, and Bill all in one story, I kind of can't believe I'm sitting here listening to it right now. So just thank you, one, for sharing, and I'm just kind of honored and humbled and like a little spooked.
Further synchronicities abound.
Sounds like it. Jesus.
Right. But all the head nods were just from hearing the Richard Alpert and the Neem Karoli Baba and Kundalini and just all those things that are very important in my own life as well.
Yeah, amazing.
Right. Bryce, can I ask you a question? And again,
Sure.
you don't have to, you can get to as much or little detail as you want. Because you didn't go into too much specific detail about what you personally experienced beyond the obvious emotional impact of what you went through and the results of it. I was curious listening when you were describing some of these effects, and Cody, if you've ever felt any of these things, chime in as well, please. Did you experience any of those effects of like the Kundalini energy rising up through your spine, that physical sensation? Did you experience anything that you would have considered a paranormal experience during this time?
Well, those are two questions, and I can answer with ease. I do not believe mine was an SKA, a spontaneous Kundalini awakening. I didn't have that spinal tingling, that sensation going up. Mine just was sort of a gradual slip, and then it just sort of hits. And there were some paranormal sort of type events and associations that I had in that experience in 2008, and you may have picked up on it, but I've had one or two since, and
I know
maybe someday I'll go into those, and they become even a little bit more discomforting and even strange. But that 2008 one was enough to
I had known, and I think you'd said on the show early on, like that you had something recently early on in the show. I would say probably around, this is my memory serving me, 2018, early 2018.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And so and you have hinted a little bit here and on the Patreon about stuff like that. Stuff that always felt like, to me, Cody, felt like Bryce, you might have been experiencing a sudden flooding of DMT in your brain, sort of naturally getting juiced out of the pineal gland. You know what I mean?
Well, and we've explored that as a scientific explanation. I mean, the pineal gland does produce dimethyltryptamine. I forget the word, but the body produces it in its organs, and
dimethyltryptamine.
In his great book, Rick Strassman,
DMT, the spirit molecule.
The spirit molecule.
He
talks about that sometimes even during sleep there might be micro emissions of DMT to help us enter that dream world.
I definitely feel like I've experienced that.
Yeah, and who's to say that if your body's chemistry is a little bit off, whether through God who knows what you're going through, that it couldn't spontaneously emit a full load just to trigger something so dramatic as an SSA or an SKA, so that's certainly one theory that I think does gel with science.
Bryce, do you feel like the later experiences that you've had are fundamentally different after like all the years of sobriety that you have behind you? Like, whereas this first experience you were describing was coming out of like, a period of heavy alcohol use. Like now that you have all these years of sobriety and then you having similar experiences, are they different in a way, or can you speak to that
for sure? Yeah, absolutely. The one so I had one again in 2018, and that was probably, if not as heavy, but more heavy. And then one even after that, where it wasn't so bad, having a little bit of context and sort of knowing how to navigate it a little bit, I was able to sort of ride the wave a little better, would be a good terminology. But still, they as great as they are, like feeling that, like, I mean, God, I'm sure we've all been on ecstasy or had those sort of moments on mushrooms where you're, this isn't like that. It's like that, but you're not taking those types of tryptamines or those drugs. So you're going, how the hell is this? Why is this happening? You know, it's very upending, you know?
I mean, I know when I was going through not that experience, but I've said on the show, like there was a period, Cody, you mentioned sleep paralysis, and I would have intense sleep paralysis and night terrors and hallucinate at night. You know, I never felt like I was going crazy, but I was definitely like, okay, something's going on. So I went and spoke to a therapist who was like, you know, I was worried they're going to be like, oh, you're seeing shit. But they were like, oh, no, this is anxiety and this is stress and this is all this stuff. Did you talk to anybody? And I'm interested, if so, what their reaction to this stuff was. Now, 2008, maybe not. You said you didn't talk to anybody about it.
No, I didn't talk to anybody for the longest of time. After my one in 2018, I did look for a therapist. And unfortunately, most clinicians are not versed in this literature. There's not a lot of studies done on it. There's not a lot of people coming forward about their experiences. So it's really important, I think, to find the sort of the right therapist who's not just going to, throw this away as a psychological breakdown or an episode of
a psychotic break.
Of a psychotic break, because I did a lot of research on what that was, what that looked like, and the signature markers of that stuff. And I got really comfortable saying, okay, that's not what I experienced, you know?
Right.
So it's important to find the right kind of guidance. And at the end of the show, I will, I'll give the name of a place that can help people who are looking for that type of help.
All right.
I like your analogy of the wave a lot, Bryce. Like I think about that a lot, and I've used that analogy in the past also for like people that are like having like on the edge of a bad trip on psychedelics or something. But it's like with the wave, like you have to ride the wave. So if you don't paddle at all, like the wave will either just smash you or crush you down. Or if you struggle against the wave, then you'll have the same result. But if you can balance those two things and just ride on the wave, then you're sort of just like dancing on the edge of life, you know? And
oh my God. Yeah.
I just think that's a really apt analogy for what you're talking about. It's the combination of like effort and also like sort of surrender at the same time.
Acceptance.
You know?
Yeah. Well, and dancing is a great word because, you know, as sort of scary and traumatizing as it can be, there's so many wonderful things that can happen during these types of I mean, some people call it downloads. You get flooded with some information that there's no way you would be privy to. It feels like a knowledge download from God only knows where. You're writing stuff down. You're like, holy shit. Like, you know, you're getting these insights into all kinds of subjects, and you're just, you know, you really feel like the universe is an open book in a sense, you know. It's quite it's a wild ride, that's for damn sure.
Cody, have you had experience of like, oh fuck, I just found pure bliss, you know, in the moments of either recovery or I mean, I guess we're, you know, you're always in recovery in some sense, I guess, but like any moments of like bliss or like truth zaps, you know, for lack of a better term, that hit you?
Absolutely. I have to say, I want to add to the list of believe it or bullshit. SSA is believe it. Believe it, believe it, believe it. 100%. I think, you know, something that you'll often hear in recovery groups is like sometimes it happens quick, sometimes it happens slow. And I think for me, I've really experienced both. I can think to one moment in particular, and, you know, maybe this wasn't the same kind of blissful experience, but I don't necessarily know that these always have to be defined by pure bliss, because it does really stand out to me. And I'll start by saying I've heard a lot of these stories. You know, if you think, I think it's Ramana Maharshi has one, Eckhart Tolle has one, where they're asking the question of who am I? Who am I when you remove my arm, my other arm, my legs, my like all the way down to their psyche, all the way down to their self? Who am I? And it sends them into what you might describe as an existential panic, but they come out on the other side with sort of this similar type of awakening in terms of, you know, touching the seat of consciousness, touching reality, being downloaded with information, however you want to put it. And I can remember in a moment that I would consider my lowest point, my rock bottom, you know, when I was really heavily drinking, I had a lot of fear of death. And I remember just one night falling asleep, really truly imagining in a way I hadn't before what it would be like to not exist, to die, to go into the void eternally. And it really, really sent me into a panic. And it I came out the other side of it just, wanting answers, but also kind of feeling what it was like to give into that. And it sort of set me on a path of, I remember I looked up like a lecture on the Tibetan Book of the Dead and started to, and that was years before I ever actually went into recovery, got sober, but it set me on the path that eventually led me to Ram Dass, that eventually led me to the teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh and other spiritual teachers, that I think, yeah, exactly.
Got him right here.
Yeah, and that moment was truly, I think, my moment of who am I when I am no longer here? Who am I when you take everything away? And led me. I think you mentioned something in your story, Bryce, about sometimes this leads you down another spiritual path, and certainly that's the one that resonated with me. It was just a spontaneous moment where sort of existence was put so profoundly into my consciousness that it set me on a new path forever. And there have been other moments since then of bliss, of touching reality. I think all sort of spiritual teachings or religions sort of are fingers pointing to the same moon.
Sure.
And the moon is often, I think, the answer to the question of who are we? Who are we really? And a lot of us are asking that question, and sometimes, the answer's there all the time. It's a matter of how open we are to receive it, and sometimes things just align, and it happens. And there are, I think, many paths up that mountain, but sometimes it just happens spontaneously.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that, Bryce. And
Of
Cody,
course.
thank you for sharing as well. Cody, this comes to the end of our Clubhouse session. I have a feeling we could talk for at least 4 or 5 more episodes without needing to take a break. But fortunately for our listeners, you have a podcast. So where can people find you, find your work, and find the show?
Yeah. So Thru is the podcast, THRU, on all platforms. And my socials, I've got a really fun TikTok channel. It's Cody's Going Through It, THRU. Cool. And Instagram is the same thing. Cody's Going Through It. Thru is with THRU.
Great. We'll tag you in all the stuff. So if you follow us over on Instagram at Bigfoot Collectors Club, and you should, because that's the best way to complete the experience of the show, then you'll be able to find Cody and Thru very easily over there. So make sure you're following all of that as well. Cody, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a blast. We're definitely going to have you back at some point. And you know what? If you're serious about maybe doing some Bigfoot investigating for us on the side while you're hiking out there, we would not be opposed to it. Let's get to the bottom of this.
Let's go for it. I'll either find Bigfoot or I'll have a spontaneous spiritual experience. So,
there you go. We know the term cub
win.
reporter, but maybe we should change it to club reporter for this. You could be our official club reporter out
I love
in the
it.
field.
Love it. Absolutely.
Awesome, man.
Thanks for having me, y'all.
All right. Well, you don't want to ever miss an episode of Bigfoot Collectors Club, because you never know what sort of truths are going to be revealed, like we had on this week's episode. Bryce, thank you so much for opening up and sharing to everybody. That was really, really cool.
Well, thanks for creating the space, man, and you listeners as well. I feel good here. I feel good to share.
You putting that out too will like resonate into the universe, rather than just telling it to one person. You're telling it to everyone, and it's a wonderful thing.
Well, also, cool. Bryce is like, the difference between you and me, Bryce, is you will take like years to ruminate and figure it out, whereas I'll be like, I think an alien visited me in my dreams last night. I'm like real time sharing shit that doesn't add up later. Yeah. But anyway, so you can get every episode of BCC by what? Following us on Spotify or Apple or your favorite podcast app. We want to hear from you, so rate and review us while you're there. If you drop us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, we might read it on the show, like this one.
This is from Sun Luip, all caps. I listen on Spotify is the title. I listen on Spotify, but came over here to just say you three are unmistakably the best people to be exploring high strangeness and getting it out to the masses. Awesome podcast. Thank you all. 5 stars.
Wow.
Thanks, son.
That's a twofer.
Love that.
That's both best of both worlds. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Thank you. Like I said, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Bigfoot Collectors Club and on TikTok at BCC Pod. I know a lot of you out there have been binging this past spring, and you're probably running out of show and wondering, well, fuck, now I just got to wait week to week for this. Guess what? No, because you know what? There's a whole other parallel dimension to Bigfoot Collectors Club. It's called BCC The Other Side. It's our Patreon. We have over 215 bonus episodes, and that's not even counting all the Cosmic Tracks, original soundtracks, scores, and music that Riley's been dropping over there for the past year. So you want to get your butts over to our Patreon at patreon.com/Bigfoot Collectors Club. You know what? Try it out for a month. $9 to get the whole kit and caboodle. $5 if you just want the 3 bonus episodes every month. $9. You could probably binge it in that. And then if you love it, stick around for more, because we're doing it every month over there.
Yeah,
so you'll get access to the whole catalog. You can do a whole other binge. So check that out. And if you do, we're going to shout your name out. It's time for Patreon shout-outs of the week. Riley, you better get ready, because your Legion is starting to fill out. All right. We got Morgan Arnold, Cosmeteer.
Thank you, Morgan. Welcome.
Of course, this person is a Cosmeteer. Dead Slayer 54, Cosmeteer.
Dead Slayer, welcome.
Linda Witt.
Thank you, Linda.
Jake Lipe.
Thanks, Jake.
Perhaps Lippe. Jake Lippe, just in case. Daniel Cosmeteer.
Thank you, Daniel. Welcome.
Elise Hawkins.
Thanks, Elise.
Cassandra Lyons.
Thank you.
Tyler X.
Thank you, Tyler.
Joe Weiss.
Oh, hey, thanks, Joe.
And Maya Austin. You guys are our 10 superstars of the week. Thank you, Club Scouts. We give you a 5-star salute right back at you. Follow me on Instagram at McMills. Other than that, I got no plugs this week. Bryce, what do you got?
If you or someone you know has experienced a distressing awakening experience, also known as a spiritual emergency or crisis, and are looking for support and guidance on how to deal with and integrate these experiences into daily life, a great place to start is the Spiritual Emergence Network, which can offer support in a variety of ways. Just go to spiritualemergence.org.
Is that, you've checked that place out? What's over there?
Only recently. I didn't use them, but as researching this story of high strangeness for tonight, I came across them, and they have a wonderful community of clinicians and therapists, all that are part of their network. So,
cool!
A great place to look if you're looking for help in this direction.
Love it. All right, right on. Riley, what do you got?
I second that. I don't need to promote my social media today. I do that.
All right,
meditate.
Fair enough. Great.
That's my shit. Yeah. That's my plug.
Meditate,
go meditate.
Create. Meditate, create. All right. One last thanks to Cody for joining us. That's it for this week. We'll see you back here next Wednesday for an all-new episode of BCC. Until then, good night.
And go get regressed.
Oh, man.
Bigfoot Collectors Club is executive produced by Michael McMillan, Riley Bray, and Bryce Johnson. Our show is engineered, produced, and scored by Riley Bray. Our theme song, Come Alone, is by Suneaters. Follow them on Spotify. Want more BCC? For exclusive full-length episodes every month and total access to The Other Side, check out patreon.com/Bigfoot Collectors Club.